James Talarico is proving, once again, that he does not belong in the United States Senate. He's more of a liar than most politicians, and he's too much of a liar to continue to represent himself as a man of God. This latest incident surrounds Brianna Menard, his longtime girlfriend, that they have been lying about for a very long time. Finally, they revealed the truth with just a slight edit to what they've been saying. And they, of course, dropped this late on a Friday so that it doesn't get very much attention. We have the article over at discernreport.com. Talarico's campaign finally admits what it spent 2 months denying about his quote-unquote dating. And there's still the question, is he really dating her, or did they just roll her out as an example? Who knows? I'm not going to get into his preferences. But they have been saying for a while that they started developing feelings for each other, and then she left the office, and then they started dating. They revised that Friday, saying now that they developed feelings for each other and started dating, and then she left the office. Just a little change, except quite an important one, because that demonstrates that he was dating his chief of staff, who was being paid by taxpayer dollars, and then, of course, they lied about it. Now, he moved her along. He actually got her a different job, also as chief of staff, with another Democrat, around down the hall. So I guess that made the awkwardness in the office a little bit less. This is not the first time that he's had some challenges with his relationships. In June, former Mexican-American Legislative Caucus Executive Director Irma Reyes, basically a lobbyist, confirmed publicly that she had also been in a relationship with Talarico, one that ended roughly 5 years ago. So he has a tendency to date co-workers and people within his circle. That seems to be his preferred style, which, to be clear, is not illegal. Not in the state of Texas. He's allowed to date his staffers. He's allowed to date lobbyists. He can date, forget about the whole conflict of interest. It's okay in Texas. And that's why we have to wonder, why lie about it? Why continue to lie about it for 2 months? Especially as he continues to represent himself as the honest and sane alternative for the U.S. Senate, and perhaps more importantly, he continues to represent himself as a man of God, as a pastor, as a seminarian. He is neither. He is a disaster, and under no circumstances should James Talarico be voted into office in the U.S. Senate.
I'm a politician, which means I'm a cheat and a liar. And when I'm not kissing babies, I'm stealing their lollipops.
All right, let's talk about Abdul El-Sayed, the U.S. Senate candidate in Michigan for the Democrats. Technically not a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, but it's only because of a label. I don't even know why he doesn't just claim it. Doesn't make sense, because now he's already talking like a full-blown radical. He's not doing a very good job at it. Praise God for that. He has been stumbling right out after the primary. He gets the win, and then things went south for him, sort of. But look, it's Michigan, one of the main hubs for voter fraud. The hubs being Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. There's voter fraud everywhere, but those four are the big ones. Now, I don't count California, even though it's probably by far greater, because they don't even try to cover it up. They just legalize it. So voter fraud out here is a different story. With that said, we have to be in a very aggressive, defensive position when it comes to Michigan, when it comes to Abdul El-Sayed. Not just because he could win, but because if he were in the U.S. Senate, it would be disastrous. We've talked about Talarico many times. I think that El-Sayed, it's a tough call for me between who's more dangerous, who's more damaging. Not talking about the policies, okay? Because policies, whatever they say during the policies, as we've learned from Abigail Spanberger, whatever they say during the election period about their policies doesn't matter. They're just going to do whatever they want to do if they ever get into office. So I don't listen to that stuff. I listen to things about their character, their faith, their goals for the United States of America. And when I look at El-Sayed's goals, it's like, wow, that's pretty bad. Got to say, that's pretty darn awful. And yes, it might be politically incorrect to say it, but it's because he is an Islamist, and a full-blown one. Now, there's a clip. I wish I could play it. I'm still trying to get permission to play it, because this is one I don't want to get dinged over El Sayed, but there's this clip that shows him speaking. I believe it was recently. I think it was after but I also couldn't confirm that. I think it was after his victory, and he's talking about how about I don't know 15 years ago or so, Oklahoma had a vote to ban Sharia law, and he's like, "What does that even mean?" Like he doesn't. He's pretending like he doesn't understand what it means to ban Sharia law. So there are a few ways to argue a point, right? Everybody knows the base. You can argue it based upon its merits. You can argue it based upon the demerits of the opposing view. You can lie. There's a lot of ways to try to skin a particular argumentative cat. What he's doing is he's pretending like there is no argument at all. In other words, he's not trying to defend Sharia law per se. He's saying that it doesn't matter. And that's one of the most, well, if done right, it is the most dangerous style of argument, especially when you're talking about a topic that the audience generally doesn't know much about. Unfortunately, most Americans, vast majority, really don't even know what Sharia law is. They don't understand what Islam is. And Islam is an ideology. It's a philosophy. It's something that is overarching. It's not just a religion. As a matter of fact, one can argue, and many scholars have argued, that the quote-unquote religious component of Islam is simply to drive the political and the military aspect of it. In other words, they want conquest. They use Sharia and they use the faith, the religion of Islam to drive their worldly agenda. And this can be, I'm not going to go into details about that. I'll get Bill Federer back on. He can explain it even further, as well as other people that we're trying to get on. With that said, in this clip, he's asking, what does that even mean to ban Sharia? I'm here to explain what it means to ban Sharia. It means to take the tenets of Sharia that are opposed to the United States Constitution or the various examples of the laws of the land and make it to where they cannot, under any circumstances, overrule the law of the land. You cannot put Sharia in any regard over the law of the land. Now, here's where it gets sticky, because we've seen examples where a faith or faith in general can be used to exempt things. And this is the part that concerns me the most about people like El Sayed, because he is smart. Don't think, oh, he's just another AOC dimwit. No, the dude's smart. Very smart. And he's proving that, unfortunately. With that said, these exemptions that he or others, and there are others, are going to try to initiate, all pertain to Sharia law. It's about, I'll give you an example, vaccine exemptions, religious exemptions for vaccines. Okay, we all know about that. That's not overriding the Constitution. Okay, there's no constitutional mandate to deliver vaccines, nor is there a constitutional right to say no to government mandates unless there is an exemption. And by government mandates, I'm not saying, oh, so if the government says we must take a vaccine, that means we must. No, that would be unconstitutional. What would not be unconstitutional is to say, for example, and I'm hoping they don't do that, but is to say, for example, that if you have a certain disease that you must be in quarantine or lockdown. That's something that the authorities are capable constitutionally to be able to initiate. I'm not talking about the lockdowns from 2020 or 2021. You can make an argument that those lockdowns were definitely unconstitutional. I'm talking about in reverse. Instead of saying everybody's in lockdown or everybody's this or that, saying that, in this condition, for example, if somebody has a particular disease, you can quarantine that person, not the population, just the affected person. That's part, that's not only is that law, that's common sense. Or that's not law, it's legal. But what if, let's say, somebody has a vaccine exemption? Okay, you get the idea. I'm hammering the point home way too much. I played this little clip. This is a short clip. But I want people to understand that the ignorance of most Americans when it comes to Islam, when it comes to Sharia, And when it comes to these candidates that have embraced the Islamist perspective, that's where we start getting into some really weird things. Because in this clip, you'll hear he might as well have been Elvis Presley starting to sing "Love Me Tender," the way that the crowd erupted based upon him saying "Inshallah." Listen.
I want you to remind them that if we come through this, when we come through this, inshallah, that we'll have taken $70 million on the chin and kept fighting back.
Notice how he paused. He knew it was going to get the crowd riled up. And they were just screaming all giddy. Oh, yay, he said the word. He said the word. The people around us, many of them, I'm not just talking about any random Democrat. I'm talking about the growing number of radicals, mostly young people, but there are middle-aged and even elderly people that are starting to fall for this whole Marxism crap, and they are starting to embrace this Islam aspect of it. The Red-Green Alliance is forming all around us. And don't think that, oh, but common sense will win out. Really? Don't think that, the Constitution will definitely win out. There are forces working against even the Constitution itself. And unfortunately, yes, the vast majority of those forces are driven by the Democratic Socialists of America. And that the Democratic Socialists of America are essentially controlled. We would say, this is all just a bunch of young white people. True, but the control factors are globalist, and the control factors in many ways are Islamist. This is why we're seeing people like Zohran Mamdani doing so well. Abdul el-Sayed. They have the inside track, we'll say. And in the coming days, the coming weeks, the coming months, we have to treat this like it is an existential threat, because if they are able to get control, and by control, to be clear, and I've said this before, I'm not going to hammer it home too hard, but I want everybody to understand, they don't need 50% to have control. They need a strong enough voting bloc in order to derail the Democrat agenda without them. That's it. Okay? If Democrats, God forbid, but if they are able to take control of the House, the Senate, or both, if there is a contingent of Democratic Socialists of America members that is greater than the gap between the Republicans and the Democrats, then in that scenario, the Democrat Socialists of America are the ones that are actually in control. It's not going to be the majority that are quote-unquote regular Democrats. It will be the very vocal and unified few who will be able to determine the path, because all they have to do is withhold their votes if their demands aren't met. We saw this to some extent with the Tea Party under Boehner and Paul Ryan. We've seen this, well, we haven't really seen much of it prior to that. You could go back to the Civil War, but even then you could definitely go back to the Civil Rights Movement. But the Dixiecrats weren't powerful enough to stop it. They were close. They couldn't get quite enough to overcome. Anyway, and that was bipartisan, so that even technically doesn't count either. So, bipartisan, mostly Republican, by the way, to be fair. Same with the Civil War, ending slavery, mostly Republican. Just saying. Anyway, point is that if they were to get control, then it's not just, we got to win it back, guys. No, it will fundamentally change the United States of America in a way that's far more potent than what Barack Obama tried to do. He was planting the seeds in a way that was more potent than even Joe Biden was able to do with his open borders. He wasn't aware of anything, but you get the idea. These guys will be shooting for 2028, and they will have the inside track. We have to stop them now and not wait until after the midterms to address it. We need to stop them before the midterm elections. Stop them now, right here, before they become unstoppable.
Stay out of my territory.
Breaking news flash. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody knows this. Beef prices are way up. They continue to go up, and unfortunately, they're There is no projection that I've seen that shows the price of beef going down anytime soon. Some say it might go down in 2027. Most say 2028 is the most likely scenario. If beef is going to go down, it won't be until 2028 when the situation is, hopefully, Lord willing, different. Now, for those of us who love beef, and I happen to be one of those who absolutely loves beef, this can be very challenging. I mean, it's getting expensive. It's getting hard to have my weekly steak. We're now down to about a monthly steak, and that's not good. So what do? Well, we make it through it. Obviously, there are ways to save money, but from a survival perspective, those of us who do want beef available during crazy, perhaps even apocalyptic times, we have to make some hard choices. Yeah, I used to own a prepper beef company, or partially own. I didn't own it, but I did have a stake in it, pun intended. And back then, I mean, we were already being told that our prices were high. You know, as premium, we were selling freeze dried steaks, New York strip, ribeye, tenderloin, the works, sirloin. And but we were even told back then that the prices were pretty high, and that was when the actual cost was probably about 50% cheaper than it is today. Obviously, prices have gone up tremendously, so I couldn't imagine running that company today. We have an article over at lateprepper.com. Beef problem? The beef problem. Why your burger costs $7 and won't come back down until 2028. And I don't even want to dwell on the why. I mean, we already know why. This, you can look at the numbers. Yes, I'm going to buzz through a lot of this. Forgive me. You're welcome to read the entire article. But here's we've seen the price have gone up 10% in 2026, 72% for ground beef since January of 2020. The U.S. cattle herd is at a 75-year low, and the last time that it was at or near even 86.2 million head, the population of the United States was about half of what it is today. So it's not just low beef, it's low beef compared to a lot more people. Beef and veal prices rose 15% year over year. That's, again, not a good sign. Unfortunately, very few in Washington are even really paying much attention to it. They're talking about it, but there's a reason why they're not like, oh, we're going to get the beef prices down, because they can't. I mean, we've had the droughts, we've had challenged beef was underpriced before, to be clear. We've had some other challenges with entire herds oftentimes getting culled. It's disgusting. I would argue that it was an attack, but that's for a conspiracy theory another day. And we do want to see it rebuild, but unfortunately, the infrastructure is just not there. That's the biggest challenge, is that we don't have what it takes to. It's like, okay, let's ramp it up. You notice we did that with eggs. Eggs we were able to ramp up real quick, right? Not with beef. It's just a longer cycle, a lot more money involved, and a lot bigger challenges. 75% of the beef cow herd is currently in drought. Screw worms, we've heard about all of that stuff, which doesn't make sense. There's only four, and this is where I get into the infrastructure aspect of it. There are only 4 meat packers that control roughly 85% of the fed cattle market. And packing plants in Nebraska, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee have already closed to cut hours this year. Americans have been losing ranching base for decades, and it's not getting any better. So let's get into the solutions, though. Okay, you get the idea. I didn't even mention the war. Let me refresh. Yeah, I didn't even mention the war, but I'll be sure to add that. But yeah, it's bad. So what can we do? Number one, and this is something where some people will get mad at me when I say it like this, but if you are in a position right now where you can't afford a freezer, or you don't have space for a freezer, then you have bigger. Then don't worry about stocking up on beef. Focus on your bigger issues. If your issue is, hey, we're not hurting that bad yet, but we want to be prepared, get a freezer. Yeah, I got one of those, not big freezer, but it's medium-sized freezer. You can't see my hands, but I don't know, it's wide, okay, and it's pretty well loaded. I don't know how big it is. how much it holds, but we keep it pretty well stocked. It's actually a little lower than it should be because we had to break into it pretty recently. But yeah, freeze it up. Beef will last for a while. You can get a small chest freezer, runs about $150, 150 to $250, and it pays for itself in a good sales cycle. If you can get a bigger one, awesome. Grocery stores still run loss leaders every now and then. Promotions on ground beef and roasts. When they do, go buy a lot. Take advantage of low prices. Understand the prices. Know what they should be. And when you see something that's super low, number one, ask why. But number two, go stock up if you can. And last but not least, don't tell me that you don't have the space. A small chest freezer fits in a condo, a garage corner, an apartment, closet. You can find a spot for it. Again, if your challenge is that you can't get a small freezer, you don't have any space for it, then you probably have bigger issues to deal with than just having a enough beef in case of the apocalypse. Now, when it comes to beef, frozen beef, if you take it, you do it right, you get it preferably directly from a rancher or at least from a local butcher, or even if you have to get it from the grocery store, take it, get it partitioned out, get it vacuum sealed, and then frozen immediately. If you do everything right, technically speaking, the beef will stay good for an extremely long time, for years, but good is relative. It deteriorates and starts to not taste very good after a certain period of time. Some say 18 months. I did a test. We'd gotten an entire roast, chopped it up, and I took part of it, and we ate it. And then 2.5 years later, we took the rest of it, and we ate it again after it had been frozen. And it wasn't great. It was good. It was acceptable. It wasn't unhealthy. Okay, it just didn't retain its flavor. It didn't retain its tenderness. It was frozen beef. There's a reason why they say, "Oh, never frozen." Well, sometimes you have to freeze it, especially if you're planning for the future. And just know that over time, whether it's 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 30 months, whatever, over a period of not very long, it does get to the point where it's just not great. It might be good. It was good enough. I mean, we ate it. It's not like, oh, this is awful, let's throw this out. No, we ate it. But it was noticeably not as good as it should have been. So keep that in mind. But as far as if it's just about survival, then, there's always salt, butter, and garlic, can cover up a little bit of weirdness to it, I guess you could say. Number 2, go half cow or quarter cow. Half cow. I gotta talk to the writer. It's a side of beef. A half cow is a side of beef. An entire cow is a whole beef, and then there's a quarter beef. And if you get any less than that, you're not really saving any money. You might as well just wait for the sales at the grocery store. But if you can get a large amount, a half of a cow, which is a side of beef, or even a whole cow, great, do it. Get that, get it chopped up, get it butchered, okay, individually wrapped, preferably. It might cost extra. Do it if you can afford it, and then freeze that up, okay. What you can, keep it fresh, whatever you need to. Beef will stay, especially if it's vacuum sealed. It'll stay in the refrigerator for a very long time, longer than most foods. So yeah, do that. And if you need to save money, go in with friends, family, whoever. Do what you can to save money and to get as much beef as possible. Get it in the freezer, or even go a step further and learn how to pressure can your food. Now, when it comes to meats, my preferred method of preservation is canning. I like it better than frozen. With frozen, there's the big risk is massive long-term extended grid outage. Now, rule number 1, I shouldn't have to tell you this, but I did learn that it wasn't common sense from somebody that if the power goes out, don't open your freezer. Preferably don't even open your refrigerator. Keep them sealed up, keep the insulation, don't let any air get into it until okay, cool, the power's back on. Because You open it up, the temperature rises tremendously, just one opening. So, with that said, but let's say that you're in a situation where the power is out for an extended period of time. Grid goes down, something apocalyptic happens, and you're not going to have power for your freezer. Well, that sucks. But that sucks for your frozen beef. But your canned beef doesn't need any power. It needs power to get it canned, of course. But it doesn't need any power to keep it safe for an extended period of time for years. Okay, I'm not going to quote you an exact period of time because I don't want anybody saying, and oh my gosh, I listened to Rucker's advice and we got sick. I'm not going to tell you how long beef will last if it's properly canned, cooked and canned, pressure canned. But it's a long time. We'll just say that. A good amount of time. Not as good as freeze drying, but the quality is better. Freezers fail when the grid fails. Canned beef is shelf stable for years and needs no electricity to keep. A pressure canner is a one-time investment that lets you put up complete, ready-to-eat meals in jars. And that's another beautiful thing, is that you take the food and you're actually cooking it in the jar as it's getting sealed. It's an amazing process. That's how Spam's made. People think, they take Spam, they cook it, and they put it in the can. No, they put it in the can and then they cook it. It's beautiful. This is the difference between stocked freezer and true food security. You can take canned meat. You can just buy it if you don't want to can it yourself. I don't recommend that, but you can. You can, or you can buy cans. That's my preferred way we'll call it medium to long term, because again, it can last for years. The other way, if you're wanting to get situated for the long term, freeze drying is the only way to do it. Freeze drying is the best way to do it. I partially owned a freeze drying company for years, for a little while. I shouldn't say years, a couple years. And during that time, I learned that freeze dried beef is very good. Some people prefer it over the what's it called, the canned beef. You can take freeze dried beef, especially if it's cooked, and if you can rehydrate it in, say, like a hot stew, you can't tell maybe you can, but a lot of people couldn't even tell the difference. We had one of our customers who told us, hey, we served it to guests one time. We didn't have enough food, thought we planned it out, had a big to get together, went ahead and made a big pot of beef stew, and just threw in the freeze-dried chunks they use New York strip, and they said that nobody said a thing. Everybody loved it. So that can be very good. Now, if you have to rehydrate in water, that's fine too. If you have to rehydrate in cold water, that'll take hours. If you can rehydrate in hot water, that'll take minutes. So there's that. And the key there is that as long as it is properly sealed with oxygen absorbers in the appropriate Mylar bags, then it can last for 25 years. That's the beauty of it. That's why you get in. And ever since we started our company, because the options out there suck, unfortunately, the options out there still kind of suck. There's they sell beef crumbles or whatever. Ugh, don't even get me started. I've tried it. It's like beef porridge, whatever. Maybe there's better options out there. I haven't found them yet. So I suggest doing it yourself. You can get your own freeze dryer, right? They're not cheap, but over time, especially if you really, when it comes to something like beef, it will, in my humble opinion, pay for itself, especially if you are preparing for anything bad that could be coming in the future. You can always go to jdrucker.com/harvest, jdrucker.com/harvest, and that will get you taken care of. Talk to my good friends over at Harvest Right. I have good friends at Heaven's Harvest too. And I wish they would sell beef chunks or beef cubes or whatever, but they don't. They do sell beef, but they do sell the ground beef. And freeze-dried ground beef, I'm just telling you, it's not that great. Not something I would recommend. I would rather you can it. And then number 5. If you got no other options, this is the last resort, is to just basically get used to something else. The price divergence is the whole argument. Beef is up 15%, while chicken is only up 1.1%, and milk is flat. So the market is handing you a roadmap. Stretch the beef that you have. The chili, meatloaf, casseroles, soups turn turn 1 pound into 2 meals. And of course, you can then take those, put them into your harvest dry freeze dryer, and save them for the future. Rotate out chicken, eggs, beans, whatever. Yeah, just make adjustments to your lifestyle from a price perspective. From a prepper perspective, either start doing it now, stocking up on whatever beef you can, and storing it appropriately. Again, with my preferred methods being to get it to either can it or freeze dry it. And freezing it is, all three is great. They're great options. Notice I did not mention dehydrating. So things like beef jerky, for example, they are great, but I would recommend, number one, they don't last as long. Okay, you're talking about months, maybe a year and a half at best, because the dehydration process is not like freeze drying. Freeze drying takes out like 99.99% of the water, whereas dehydration takes out like 97% or something like that. It's not enough. That's why it doesn't. It's good for short-term preservation, not good for long-term preservation. The other reason I say don't get a dehydrator and dehydrate it yourself, yes, it can be good, but there's the storage issue. But you can find a good jerky. We use a local rancher that sells jerky. There, it's great. You can just go buy some whenever you need. Great for backpacking, great for whatever. There are reasons and uses for dehydrated beef or beef jerky, but I don't consider them necessarily to be great survival foods. Short term, fine, but like if you're looking to bug in for years, not the best option. The bottom line, let's see what we say here. The bottom line is that the market is telling you the truth. Even when the headlines aren't, the people who paid attention to tight cattle inventories 2 years ago are eating $4 ground beef out of their freezer right now. It's true. People who waited are paying $7 a pound and complaining about it, but you're not too late, because if we can assume that prices will continue to go up, then you will be thanking yourself for paying what we consider to be extra today. Oh my gosh, $7 for ground beef, that sucks. Yeah, but what if ground beef hits $8, $12, $14, $25? What if it becomes basically cost prohibitive for you to get some? It will be nice to have a lot stocked up.
Firm but with a little give. Yep, these are medium rare.
What if somebody wants theirs well done?
We ask them politely yet firmly to leave.
Here's a strange story out of NYC. Mayor Zohran Mamdani has officially turned New York City into a nanny state. Literally, they're going to offer parents the opportunity to let the city be nanny for one night and one night only. Article over at the Gateway Pundit last week. Zohran Mamdani launching city government babysitting service so parents can have a date night. They're calling it a date night, and okay, I'll read a bit of it. Conservatives used to joke that the left was trying to turn the government into a nanny state. Now Zohran Mamdani is taking it literally. New York City's mayor is launching a service where people in the city can drop their kids off at the park to be looked after by government officials while the parents can have a date night. What could possibly go wrong? Would you be comfortable dropping your kids off at a New York City park and then going out to dinner? I would not trust New York City officials to watch my cactus, let alone my kids. And I don't even own a cactus, but they can't watch it or anything of mine. And it's not ripping on city officials. Some of them are actually probably okay. But this is a very strange one. This isn't a campaign promise. This sort of came out of left field. It's like, oh, hey, on August 16th, so for one day only, 5 locations, up to 100 kids at each location. So 500 kids got to register that day, first come, first serve. They are going to be watched. The kids will be watched from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. for this one time. Now, you're probably asking yourself what a lot of people are asking. It's like, what is the point? The official statement from Mamdani, this is what he said when he's reading his prepared remarks. He said, every parent knows that a few hours to yourself can feel like a luxury. It shouldn't be. That's why we're launching New York City's first ever Parents' Night Out. so that parents can get a little time on their own to catch a movie, run errands, or go on a date without worrying about who will take care of the kids or how much it will cost. Now, I am going to throw out my theory about this. To me, this is a trial balloon. It's a tester. It's a tester for logistics. It's a tester for I guess appetite. See if they can get 500 people, and if so, or 500 kids, and if so, it's could they get more? I mean, I can't see how just offering taxpayer dollars to pay for this, because you figure daycare or babysitting in the city is anywhere from $30 to $50 an hour. So we'll call it 30. So that would be 500 kids. That's $15,000. That's per hour. Then you got 4 hours. We'll say an average of 5 hours, because you got pickup. You got to keep the babysitter there for a little bit longer. So we'll keep it at 4 hours. Just so that's 60 grand. Not much. Not a lot to spend, right? Drop in the bucket in New York City's bloated budget. But here's the thing. The fact that it's one night, the fact that this is just some random program, it could be, just to throw it out there as a distraction, just a little minor win to say that they're doing something. It's like, oh, look at what we did. That's possible, maybe even likely. But part of me thinks that, again, this is more like a trial balloon. This is something that is intended for a bigger program in the future, maybe later this year, maybe next year, maybe whenever, where they are actually trying to basically turn New York City into the provider of daycare for residents. Use this as another communist program. Bring the kids in, have an opportunity to indoctrinate them. It's conspicuous that the age is, I think, is like 6 to 13, which is perfect age, to be able to have activities that can start to plant seeds in the kids. You might say, oh my gosh, Rucker, that's such a crazy conspiracy theory. Why would they even do that? Well, my question would be, why would they do any of this? None of it makes sense. So if my crazy conspiracy theory is one of the possibilities and somebody else's crazy conspiracy theory is another one, when you're talking about the idiocy of the radical left, anything's possible.
Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
Well, we can't talk about New York City and then not talk about California. From one coast to the other, the Democrats are a disaster. But this time, it's not what the Democrat wanted to do, but what they wanted to not happen. In this case, it is our favorite guy, Gavin Newsom, and his secret calendar that has finally been exposed. And ooh, what it exposes is crazy. According to an article we have over at Patriot.tv, Gavin Newsom's secret calendar exposes a governor who barely clocks in. This is a man who makes more than anyone else in the state of California, at least the government. And that's not even important, to be clear. It's not just that he makes money and taxpayers are paying for him. It's that he has made the commitment. As governor of California, he has made the commitment to try to do right by the state. That's why people elected him, other than, of course, the potential for voter fraud and other things. But yeah, we want things to be better out here, and they're just not getting any better. According to the article, 18 weekdays were marked no official business. 18 weekdays. 53 blocks of mysterious quote-unquote work time. A typical day that often starts after 9 a.m. and wraps up before 5. This is how California's highest-paid public servant spent the first 4 months of this year, after months of stonewalling that forced the California Post to bring in lawyers. Governor Gavin Newsom finally coughed up his official calendars. What they show is not a man grinding away at the multiple crises, crushing the Golden State. It is a man treating the governor's office like a part-time gig while he polishes his presidential resume, while he bows to the Chinese Communist Party, while he pretends to be this big tough guy going after President Trump. He's not. He's not a tough guy. He's barely a guy. And I get it. He's got some, I guess, appeal about him. But every time I see him, I just get disgusted. Because I live out here and I know how damaging he has been to people around me, to my family, and to this state that should be leading the way instead of falling further and further behind. 1 in 4 non-holiday weekdays between January and April carried zero scheduled government business. On February 6th, the entire official entry was a single work time block from 2 to 5:20 p.m. From April 3rd through April 12th, the only item listed was a 35-minute stop at the North Salton Sea Conservancy. The rest of the stretch, blank. Why is it blank? Because he is campaigning. He doesn't care about California anymore. He probably never cared about California. It's like he never cared about San Francisco. This is a man who, from a purely political perspective, has been an absolute disaster. He's not a leader. He's not a motivator. He has no plan that actually works. And the only plan that he has, this is the craziest thing, the only thing that he's ever done very well is get elected in rig elections. So, yes, dude's great campaigner, horrible debater, but great campaigner. You know, he's got that $1 million smile. He's got the hair. He's got the weird motions that apparently somebody taught him disarms people, psychologically speaking. I don't know why he does it, but I'm sure he's got a reason, because he's a calculating SOB. That's what he does. He calculates, he schemes, he plots. He has machinations instead of just actual goals or plans. The dude he needs to have a twirly mustache because that's who he is. That's who he's always been. The only other thing that he's ever been able to do well is to get legislation passed and help the state situate and protect itself as the voter fraud haven of America, arguably of the world. And when I say protect, some states they'll try to figure out ways to hide the voter fraud, to cover it up. No, not in California. They just legalized it. Okay, they said, oh yeah, no, just go out, get ballots. If somebody comes in to vote, trust them, wink at them, say, yeah, sure, buddy. Patricia with a mustache, yeah. They didn't make it easier to scam. They made it legal to scam, and that's what we saw in Los Angeles. Not making any direct accusations for the sake of legalities, but my deep-rooted suspicion is that the environment here in California is designed explicitly to allow permanent single-party rule for the Democrat Party. And that you can attribute a good chunk of that. It was in the works before Newsom was governor, but a lot of it happened while he was governor, while he was lieutenant governor. Even early machinations were starting to reveal themselves when he was mayor of San Francisco. Now, everything else about his time, outside of his mastery of legalizing voter fraud, every other component of his leadership, starting in San Francisco and all the way through to the state, and hopefully it stops here. I couldn't imagine him being president. God forbid. But everything else has failed miserably. Don't even get me started on the rail. That's too easy. Don't even get me started on homelessness. That's too easy. Everything else he's done has been horrible. And I could, and I should someday just go down the list of all the things that his proposals, his ideas, his whatever, they either don't happen, which is the best case scenario, or they do happen and they're a disaster. 100% of them outside of voter fraud. Legalizing voter fraud, nailed it. Everything else has sucked. And the funny part is, he's actually better than Javier Becerra, who's currently running to be the next governor of California. Becerra is worse than Gavin Newsom ideologically, and he's also, I would say, where Gavin is just ambitious, we'll call it, egotistical, narcissistic. Becerra is legitimately I think he's evil. I think that he's a full-blown satanic guy, whereas Newsom was a puppet, or is a puppet, to the forces of evil. I would say Becerra might be higher up in the evilness category. But back to somebody had to say, hey, do a story about Newsom. Here we go. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, he really chaps my khakis. Newsom's office insists that the calendars are incomplete, that the no official business. All that means that he had nothing pre-scheduled, that he had unscheduled calls and informal chats that filled the gaps, which is a convenient excuse, one that cannot be verified, of course, and one that even if we tried to verify it, they would figure out a way to make it up. But I can tell you he's not. He's not doing anything for California. You know why I know that? Because we haven't completely imploded. If he were out there actually trying to initiate his policies, initiate his plans, we would be in far worse shape. The best thing that happened to California is that he got his ambition to run for president. Otherwise, like his early years before those ambitions really started taking hold, I mean, he's always had the ambition, but before he could actually start preparing to do something about it, we were in worse shape. I mean, it was like rapid fire. Bad idea, bad policy, bad law, bad whatever. He's just horrible. The only saving grace is that he's not even paying nearly as much attention to California as he was before. Other states, though, do put their governor's schedules online as a matter of routine. Oregon keeps a public archive. Virginia, Iowa, and Utah do the same. California's progressive champion demands transparency from everyone else while treating his own daily activities like classified material. Again, in case anybody forgot, this is the same guy that demanded we never, ever, ever go to a restaurant. We never, ever, ever go to see our friends, our family. You know, he tried to encourage people to snitch on their neighbors or anybody who's having a gathering, even outdoors. The same guy was having his cronies over to the French Laundry. And for those who aren't familiar with the French Laundry, it's like one of the, allegedly, I've never been there, but it's supposed to be one of the greatest, nicest, most amazing restaurants in the world, with every person runs up, I think it's either $500 or $1,000 a head, not including alcohol. It's insane. When I say I've never been there, it's not just because I couldn't afford it, which I can't, but it's also because I wouldn't. Who's going to... I know there's some people out there that are like, oh, but the tasting menu scene is so nice. Yeah, maybe it was, but not in today's world. I couldn't imagine ever going there, but whatever. Point is that he did this at the height of COVID. I don't want this to turn into just a spit all over Gavin Newsom thing. It's ludicrous, though, that he won't be transparent. He won't. He knows he's protected is the problem. We saw this with Diapergate. For those who aren't familiar, you know, he put out this thing, hey, we're going to give free diapers to all new mothers. But they happened to sign the deal to make that happen with a company that happened to have members and ownership on the board of his wife's nonprofit. Go figure, right? But that itself is obviously a scandal. But the real scandal was how they held back the information. They covered it up because, again, out here in California, he is protected. Who cares about his schedule? His schedule's bad enough, and he will. But even that, which is minimal, which won't get him score any negative points. Nobody's going to care about this story. The fact that they had to bring in attorneys for a quote unquote public servant to compel him to tell us, hey, let us see your time card. That's all we want to see is your time card. We just want to see that you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing, what you're actually doing something to try to fix California, which is completely broken. And of course, Gavin Newsom refused.
It will shock you how much it never happened.
All right, let's talk about Iran. I've sort of avoided the topic for a little while, not because there hasn't been news. There just hasn't been any reportable news. I'm not going to sit here, we're close to a deal. Peace is on its way. Looks like Iran is finally buckling. I think a lot of us, maybe most of us, are not willing to accept that Iran is going to do anything in good faith ever, because that's not in their nature. The Iranian regime is deceitful by design. Takia demands that they lie about everything if it's going to advance the cause of Sharia, advance the cause of Islam, advance the goal of ushering in the Mahdi, the 12th Imam, the Islamic version of their Messiah, who I believe is the Antichrist. It's a discussion for another day, perhaps even a different show. With that said, you can't trust them. Whether their eschatology is at least somewhat accurate from a reverse perspective or not, doesn't matter. They believe it, and they're going to do everything in their power to promote it, which is why when they say peace, there will be no peace. I've said for my entire career as a political analyst that I'm against intervention, that I'm vehemently against regime change. But I've also said for over a year now that Iran is the exception. Iran is the different story. Now, before anybody starts saying, oh, he's a warmonger, he's calling for boots on the ground, I'm not calling for boots on the ground. At this point, as much as I would hate to say it, I am starting to warm to the idea that maybe just let the Israelis handle it. You know, that would suck, because that would mean that we would be backing off completely without victory. And we've had a partial victory, to be clear. I would argue that the nuclear program has been set back, hopefully decades, hopefully forever, but that it is definitely in shambles. And it will be very difficult for them. They would actually do better to just try to focus on oil, raise money, and try to buy a nuke. Not trying to give them any ideas. I'm just saying that is one component that we have been able to decimate. We've also been able to destroy a good chunk of their military, their navy. We've heard it all before. Unfortunately, we believe that they are being rearmed by, at the very least, China, if not Russia as well, and that they continue to pose a threat through the Strait of Hormuz. And unfortunately, again, the Strait of Hormuz is that's the sticking point. That's the part that by golly, we can't let them win there. But I don't see at this point, and I'm not a military strategist, I'm not privy to the intelligence reports, the military sit reps that the president or Pete Hegseth get. But I mean, you'd think, I'm just saying, you'd think that by now, if there was a clear pathway to end this, that it would be done. Now, a lot of people, especially in Iran, are calling for full-blown regime change. They do want boots on the ground. And if there was a way to have regime change without boots on the ground, I'd be all for that. Because again, usually you don't do regime change because the alternative, the replacement is invariably worse. In this case, it doesn't get any worse. I mean, we've changed the regime, we just haven't removed the ideology. The regime is just a different variation of the same regime. And so, even though we lopped off the head, many heads, apparently, that wasn't enough. They're still heading in the same basic direction. If anything, they've gotten even worse, as one can easily predict. Here is their latest list of demands that are, once again, completely untenable. But that's the nature of Takia.
Of Hormuz, there are questions about what comes next, and the Iranians are starting to make new demands. Iran's Supreme National Security Council issued a fresh statement this weekend calling for the United States to permanently end the war and compensate Iran for damages before the strait would reopen. This does come as Iran's foreign minister says even if a deal is reached, it doesn't necessarily mean the strait will stay open.
We have been discussing the temporary route, and we are very close to reaching a conclusion. Work is being carried out based on the maps of this route. Prepared by the armed forces, negotiations have taken place between the navies of the two countries, and the details are being finalized. I believe we will be able to conclude these negotiations very soon.
Conversations about the strait come as the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports remains in effect, costing the regime hundreds of millions of dollars each day. Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News that U.S. pressure on Iran will continue.
They're hurting in a big way. They want this thing to be over. The question is whether they're able, their system is able to give the things that are necessary for us to be happy, for us to feel like we've gotten what we need out of this particular engagement. That is still to be determined, but I do think that we've made some progress over the last few days.
With talks ongoing, Iranian proxies remain active. The Yemen-based Houthis launched a new attack on Saudi oil refineries early this morning. The Houthis have also launched several other attacks in the...
Yeah. And they're also hitting ships again. So we're not any closer. But here's the thing, and this is the reason that I wanted to, in a way, lure you all in with doom and gloom. Oh, there's nothing we could do. There's nothing we could do. J.D. Vance did touch on an important aspect of it. They are losing quite a bit of money every single day. They cannot sustain. Some have argued that they actually are already beyond the point of no return. Their economy is gone. And that's very unfortunate for the people of Iran who are suffering. I've seen stories over the weekend and last week showing levels of suffering that are similar to the horrible reports that we received from Venezuela when they were experiencing their version of hyperinflation, their version of nothingness. Right now, the Iranian people get the equivalent of, I think, $7 a month in whatever universal non-income is the easiest way to put it, and it's not enough. Stores are reporting extreme spikes in shoplifting, in direct theft. The people are hurting. They're starving. They're in a very bad way. And unfortunately, as much as we could say, oh, the Nicolas Maduro regime didn't really care about the people, the Iranian regime, the people barely exist. Okay, they are the last consideration. If the people that are in charge of Iran, and I say people because nobody really knows who's in charge. I don't think the Iranians know who's in charge. They just have disparate versions of government, military control, leader here, leader there, not talking to each other, saying different things to the U.S. This has been one of the biggest frustrations for President Trump, is that it's like we think we're talking to the right people, and then somebody else goes and does something that ruins everything we set up. That could be by design, probably is, but it also does demonstrate that they are in turmoil, they are in shambles. So here's the alternative to boots on the ground and the alternative to acknowledging defeat, because that's what it would be. If the Strait of Hormuz in any form or fashion is controlled by Iran and they start charging money after we leave, then they weren't doing that before, so the attacks ended up making the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and worldwide worse than before February 28th, and that would really suck. And I don't think President Trump is willing to do that, not just in an election year, but just period. Taking out the nukes, awesome. Had to be done. But making the Strait of Hormuz a point of revenue for them, a choke point that they would control, that was not the intention. That was not the goal. And if we were to leave now immediately, as a lot of people are saying, well, that's what would end up happening, is that they would have this form of revenue. And it's not that I'm against them getting revenue, it's just not holding the world hostage. So, as much as nobody wants to hear that, and I don't even want to say it, I would argue that the strategy is, as J.D. Vance alluded to, just keep pushing forward. Keep the pressure up. Keep negotiating. Keep the channels open to talk for when they are finally willing to give up. But they have to give up. And we've done everything we can militarily to do that. So option one, and these are not mutually exclusive, so they can both happen. Option one is continue to apply pressure, continue the blockades, continue to try to protect ships as we try to get them through, and in the meantime, hope that they just run out of the willpower to continue to starve, to lose all of that money. Give them the option. I mean, we're talking about a regime that turned down $300 billion so that they could they could make, $1 million here, $1 million there off of control of the strait because they're lunatics on top of being radical religious zealots, on top of being idiots. All that combines for creating the circumstance that they find themselves in now, the circumstance that we are stuck in. But is this a quagmire? Is this Afghanistan? Is this Iraq? No. I do believe that the end is coming. I think it will come before the midterm elections. That's what they're hoping for. They're hoping for, okay, well, if Iran's hoping, if we could just wait them out, in the midterms, Democrats will come in and stop Trump or something, and then everything will be hunky-dory, and we'll get control of the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll start charging a lot of money, and we'll start building our nuclear program again, and everything will be back to normal. That's what they're hoping for. We've got to hope that the economic pressure is just so great that they decide we can't wait any longer. Option 2, again, not mutually exclusive, is for Israel to get more directly involved, for President Trump to give Netanyahu not just the go-ahead, but basically make the demand. Look, this is your area, your region, your enemy. You want a regime change? Great. IDF, go do your thing. You got the technology, you got the people, you've got the support of the people in Iran itself, many of them, most of them. So go do the coup that you should have done probably in the early days of March. Not sure why that didn't happen, but it is what it is. There's the arming other militant groups. Not a big fan of that, but those are other options as well. Bottom line is, there's a lot of negativity towards President Trump right now. A lot of negativity, even from the right. People not liking what's happening in Iran, just wanting it to be over with. I get it. I feel the same way. But I'm asking you, be patient. Let this play out. Lord willing, it will all end very soon.